The Russian tank support combat vehicle, specifically known as the Terminator, is designed to operate within tank formations. Its purpose is to destroy enemy anti-tank weapons, suppress personnel equipped with grenade launchers, anti-tank systems, and small arms. Putin assures that its weaponry is capable of hitting tanks, the infantry fighting vehicles, pillboxes, bunkers, and other heavily fortified targets both on the move and from a stationary position. Moreover, according to Russian propaganda, there are no analogs, and the BMPT is capable, under favorable circumstances, of even shooting down aircraft.
This truly unique weapon will enhance, dampen the combat potential of our armed forces.
But the more Putin praises his wonder weapon, the more obvious its complete unsuitability on the battlefield undoubtedly becomes.
In general, this concept still provokes quite a lot of debate.
As is often the case, the much vaunted Russian technology is unique, only on paper. In reality, Putin and his cardboard generals are as afraid as fire of the Russian Terminator encountering our defenders. For the Ukrainian armed forces, this Terminator poses almost no threat. Like the vast majority of the latest so-called unparalleled weapons, in Russia, the Terminator is a development from the Soviet era. Soviet designers began working on the BMPT back in the 1980s. At that time, the main concept of the armored vehicle, which was given the mysterious name Object 199, was to create equipment with tank-level protection and anti-infantry weapon capabilities. This idea came to the minds of designers and engineers based on the experience of battles in Afghanistan, where anti-aircraft systems mounted on trucks or standard shilkas were used to escort convoys in mountainous areas. As a result, without overcomplicating the concept, Soviet engineers and designers decided to use a tank base and simply replace its armament with rapid-fire automatic guns. Moreover, the Soviet innovation was intended to be exported immediately after its creation, hence the loud name, similar to that of an American science fiction film by director James Cameron. Similar to the Terminator, the then Soviet BMPT was supposed to create no less of a sensation.
It's indeed very interesting that Russia, in its dreams, truly constantly fights with NATO and wants to erase all European influence, yet somehow named its wonder weapon after a character from an American film.
Yes, but unlike the American blockbuster, the situation with the Soviet BMPT was much worse. So, following the first cyborg assassin and the rise of the machines in 1984, by 1991, Cameron had already filmed a more expansive sequel, Terminator 2: Judgment Day. In 2003, the third film of the saga was released. Meanwhile, it was no longer the USSR, but Russia, that continued to develop its wonder weapon.
The Soviet generals needed a means with a large fire output, that is, with great firepower and a high rate of fire and overall effectiveness.
But the process was extremely slow. In fact, the search for just the concept of the machine continued until 2006. One would think that a quarter of a century would be more than enough for engineers and the military to define the machine's role on the battlefield. But, as often happens in Russia, with each new improvement, the Kremlin's Terminator became less like a modern weapon and more like a heap of metal, much like its namesake in the movie.
What is the main problem with the Terminator? The main problem with the Terminator lies in its tactical role. This is generally a fundamental criterion for creating any weapon. If we are creating some kind of weapon system, defensive, offensive, it doesn't matter. We must understand why we are creating it.
But it seems that even the developers of the BMP analogs themselves do not understand this. In the end, what happened is what happened. A 48-ton clumsy Frankenstein, despite having a powerful 1,000-horsepower engine, still remains awkward. On top of everything, operating the Terminator requires as many as 5 crew members. As you might guess, despite successful trials, the Russian army did not even adopt the Terminator. And the first batch of 10 vehicles was sold to Kazakhstan, which was forced to get involved in a new Putin adventure.
With some of their very incredibly unusual and peculiar projects, they clearly demonstrate exactly how not to do things. Let's recall how the idea of putting a Zhushka on a tank chassis came about.
Despite official statements from the Kremlin that a company in the ground forces would be fully equipped with new vehicles in 2009, the adoption of the BMPT by the Russian army did not take place. At the beginning of 2010, it was officially announced that the Russian Ministry of Defense had decided not to purchase new BMPTs. The Russian Frankenstein never found a place in the army. Only in 2018 did the newly updated Terminator, in fact, enter trial combat operation in the Russian army, where field commanders immediately were at a loss. The modern weapon and yet another expensive toy of Putin's turned out to be completely useless in real combat conditions.
All of this makes the usefulness of the Terminator in combat very, very doubtful. In short, it's a machine that's very beautiful. Yes, perfect for parades, for the training ground where it fires and spews fire in all directions, just magnificent. As for its combat value, there are questions here.
And the more experts and analysts scrutinize the much-vaunted Putin's Terminator, the more in-depth, detailed, thorough, comprehensive and extensive questions they have. Let's start at least with the appearance and design of the BMPT.
A combat module is installed, the turret is removed, so to speak, along with its module, and another combat module is installed which is heavily equipped with various types of weapons. In theory, at first glance, the Terminator possesses an absolutely monstrous firepower for a machine of this class. It is equipped with two 30mm cannons, a Kalashnikov tank machine gun PKT, an Ataka anti-tank guided missile launcher, and two AG-17D grenade launchers.
It would seem that the powerful armament should give the Russian Terminator an advantage on the battlefield. However, the much-praised firepower turned out to be useless in the face of modern combat conditions. On paper and externally, the Terminator indeed looks intimidating. The base of the T-72 or T-90 tank, on which a twin 30mm automatic cannon, a coaxial machine gun, two 30mm automatic grenade launchers, and four Ataka-T anti-tank missiles are mounted. It sounds formidable, but these are only the specifications stated on paper. In reality, what looks good on a drawing doesn't always have real combat effectiveness. And the Russian machine is precisely a case where there are no analogs. Putin's armament has been sharply criticized even among the Russian military expert community.
The combat module, this block with cannons, missiles, a machine gun, and grenade launchers, all of this sticks out from the outside of the turret and is completely unprotected from shrapnel, from large caliber bullets, from sniper bullets, from 30 or 25mm shells, even from armor-piercing bullets from a Kalashnikov machine gun. All of this can easily be put out of action.
Moreover, despite all the satisfied exclamations of Kremlin propaganda, the fact is that the actual control of the armament of the Russian Terminator is carried out by three separate people. Two soldiers must fire from automatic grenade launchers, and the gunner from 30mm cannons or anti-tank missiles. Each of them has sights with a narrow field of view, and the commander behind the panorama must simultaneously give instructions to three fire means, conduct surveillance, communicate with the unit, and indicate where to go. As a result, all this mess led the Terminator to a complete fiasco.
What will it be doing on the battlefield? What are its tasks? What is the scope of its tasks? So, regarding the Terminator, it is written that it has a very wide range of tasks, this machine. All of this immediately no, because there are no machines with such a wide range of tasks. According to the creators of this wonder weapon, it is supposed to fight infantry, armored vehicles, field fortifications, cover tanks, and engage aerial targets.
So far, all real combat experience of using the BMPT Terminator is limited to Syria, where of course it has received only positive reviews. Of course, with undeniable superiority in the air and on the ground, supported by aviation, tanks, and infantry. the handsome Terminator proudly cruised through the dunes in front of Russian TV cameras. However, this equipment is unlikely to pass tests in real high-intensity combat conditions, like in Ukraine. Even the Russian generals themselves understand this perfectly well. That's why they hide Putin's toy as far away from the front line as possible.
The powerful propaganda machine has raised people's expectations of the Terminator so high that its loss without any significant achievements would be a knockout blow. Therefore, its main task was to create psychological pressure. There were many videos of the equipment moving and shouts that now Kiev would definitely fall.
But in the end, as we know, most of the vaunted Russian equipment burned out without ever reaching Kiev. It seems the same fate awaits the Russian Terminator. But unlike the character played by actor Schwarzenegger with his famous "I'll be back," the Russian development is not awaiting a triumphant return, despite all the Kremlin's efforts, both in words and in actions, to modernize its costly and useless BMPT. And we eagerly and anxiously await each following upcoming blunder of the bloody dictator, and eagerly awaiting fresh new videos from our brave defenders where yet another one of Putin's very expensive toys will be burning brightly indeed. We hope we won't have to wait long for this. In the meantime, don't forget to like this video and comment on what other weapons you'd like to hear about in future episodes. And of course, it definitely wouldn't hurt to subscribe to our channel so you don't miss new episodes of Arsenal.